Hello everybody, this is Lena Garrett and I am a realtor with Keller Williams Central 75 and I serve Dallas-Fort Worth area of Texas. So I have a few people who ask me what to do if they have been rejected from a rent-to-own program. So first of all, let me assure you that you're not alone. I have a rent-to-own program participation, and this is my customer portal right here. And you can see, so each one of those is an individual applicant who either been declined or accepted. And as you can see, there are a lot of reds among my, so people who might refer to this rent-to-own program, usually they start the application, but they don't finish. But when they do start to upload the documents, very often they're declined. So in my personal experience, rent to own is not an easy solution for a bad credit. If you were told that a rent to own is something that you can do while you have bad credit and then you build up, not necessarily. Your credit needs to be almost as good as for a governmental loan, just a few points, just maybe like 20, 30 points below the governmental loan kind of a program for you to be easily accepted. If you're below that, then you may not even qualify for rent to own. So there are a lot of misconceptions. People think that rent to own is like a solution for people who are truly in bad credit. It is not. 90% of applicants that I see are actually declined for rent to own program, and several factors must be in your favor for the rent to own to make sense for you. Before we go into what to do about what are the next steps for you after you have been rejected from a rent to own, let me first ask you and consider this. What kind of a seller was involved in that transaction? So you got rejected for rent to own. Was it an individual seller? Was it somebody who put an ad online and maybe they have a house and they offered you rent to own, and then after a while you worked with them and it didn't work out? That's one situation. Maybe you were on some kind of a Facebook group and somebody texted you and say, hey, you want to do rent to own, come to my website, and you go to this website that nobody really knows about, and there's a program of some kind that they offer you. It may or may not make sense for you. You fill out some kind of little application and then you're declined. So that's another one. So there is a lot of individual sellers. There are some groups that offer rent to own, but they're not truly fully fleshed out programs. And then there's a couple of major nationwide rent to own programs. Home Partners of America is one of them. DV Homes is another one of them. If those were those large programs, then yeah, you may not fit for that large program. Does not necessarily mean that you may not fit the guidelines for the smaller website or for the individual seller. Also, I wanted to point out, looking at some of the ads on Facebook for rent to own, sometimes the house kind of looks like this. When they post online, you should not ever consider buying something that does not look at this like it is structurally sound or could be repaired. Just because it's a rent to own doesn't mean it's a good deal or a good property. You need to find a property that you can easily resell once you are ready to move out from that property. So sometimes you not getting that rent to own deal might have been a good thing because the house was a true disaster. Now, let's move on to what can we do about being rejected from rent to own and what are our next steps. First of all, let's consider the rent to own prerequisites. A lot of people have very impatient fingers. They see a website that says, hey, you want to pre-qualify for rent to own, without investigating any further. They just start filling out an application, not knowing what are the requirements are. So the common requirements for a rent to own programs are, first of all, you need to have a social security number. Why? Because a rent to own program involves you being able to own later. Very often, that means you have to go at the end of 3 years or however many years you're planning to rent. You need to go to a regular bank. You need to apply for a loan, FHA or conventional loan or VA, and you need to be able to get that loan. If you don't have a social security number, then obtaining that loan is kind of a narrow specialty of only a few bankers. So for people with no social security number, I'm going to have a few tips at the end of the program. Second prerequisite, they need you to have some cash flow. If you're making $2,000 per month and you're spending $1,500 on your car and your baby formula and whatever else, it means that you only have $500 to spend on your house. There is not enough cash flow for you to actually put in a rent, plus add something for the savings for the down payment. Again, rent to own is not a rent. Rent to own means you're supposed to be paying rent plus setting aside money for the down payment. If your landlord see that you may afford rent, but you cannot save money for the down payment, the rent to own program is not for you, because at the end of 3 years, you'll be exactly where you started without a down payment. So no cash flow, probably won't be able to get the rent to own. You need to, again, you will need to show that you will be able to secure a credit in 3 years. So the landlord needs to see that you have a clear, very defined path from renting to getting approved for a governmental loan. You need to have some credit history. I have encountered several people who have zero credit history, and they say, well, they never wanted to get into debt, so they never opened a credit card, never had a paid cash for their car, paid cash for whatever they needed to do. That is great for you until you need to buy a house. When you buy a house, no credit history means zero house for you. A lot of people don't understand that. They think that no credit history means great credit. Not true. You need to show good credit history. Verifiable income. So quite a few people have all cash. They might have a lot of cash. They might have a very well cash flowing business selling ice cream on the street, but that cash is not documented anywhere. They don't file tax returns. Their cash, the cash that they do document for their tax returns is like a small fracture of their actual cash flow. All is good until you need to buy a house. But then how is your landlord going to verify that you actually have all that cash? So if you don't have, at the very least, some basic invoices showing that cash is coming in, we don't have some kind of a bank statements showing cash coming in, coming out, then it's your word against nothing that you actually have that great cash. So verifiable income needs to be verifiable. You need to have almost good credit. Rent to own is not for people with poor credit. It's for people with almost good credit. Almost good credit means if you have below 500, you're not going to probably going to get the rent to own from any of the sources available online. Not having a 800 FICO score, that's all right. Not having a 500 FICO score, that's not all right. So ideally, you want to be at 550 or above, but at the very least at 500 for at least some individual sellers to consider you. You need to be not in the middle of a bankruptcy or foreclosure or a divorce. If you're in the middle of a bankruptcy or foreclosure, well, let me scratch the divorce because you're renting for 3 years. But if you're in the middle of a bankruptcy or foreclosure, then whatever assets you have can completely be taken away from you based on the outcome of whatever claims that you have against you. So no landlord is going to touch an ongoing bankruptcy or foreclosure case. You need to show no recent evictions. Landlords are landlords. They hate evictions. So if you have a history of recent evictions, then rent to own will probably need to wait until those evictions kind of fall off your record. And even though you do show history of evictions in general, they will be, you will show good behavior after the evictions. So they want to see a good stable period when you have no issues with prior landlords, because they're going to be your landlord for 3 years. They don't want a problem child. They want a business, good solid business case. You also need to have down payment. So a lot of people think that rent to own requires maybe $1,000 down payment. I had quite a few people who contacted me, and I asked them how much they have for a down payment, and they say 500 bucks. When I get paid on Friday, I might have 7. That's not how you buy a house. A normal house that's not a broken down shack in the middle of a field is going to cost about 150 to 200,000 K in DFW. I mean, 3 bedrooms plus, that has, you know, normal size closets, normal size washer and dryer, space for refrigerators. You don't have to park your refrigerator outside. So a down payment needs to be a minimum of 2%. So if it's a $150,000 house, you need to have at least $3,000 in your name to, like, it's to start, just to start, but preferably 4 to 5%. So when you look at the potential houses on Zillow or whatever, kind of calculate in your mind how much would 2% be, and how much would 4% be, and 5% be. Where are you on that scale? Are you closer to 2%, or you're closer to 5%? The closer you're to 5%, the more likely you're to be approved for a loan. Although with 2%, you can still get away with some of the programs. So when you get rejected for an application, when you get rejected for an application for seller finance, analyze the responses that you received. Why did they reject you? Was it insufficient credit? If your credit is 420 and they rejected you, don't be surprised. 420 is just too far from the required credit that you need to be able to finance your house in 3 years. So insufficient credit is very often the case. Insufficient work history. If you change your jobs 4 times in the last 2 years or 5 times, then the seller may not feel very comfortable that you will be able to maintain stable employment during those 3 years. Again, bankruptcy, foreclosure, short sales, we just discussed, and evictions. Low income, we just discussed. If you only make $2,000 and you have 5 kids and you have 2 car payments, you don't have cash flow. Not enough down payment, and monthly debts are too high. So you might be making, it's not how much you're making. Some people say, I make $7,000 per month. Sounds great. How much are you spending on your debts? If you're making $7,000 per month, but your debts are $6,500, you're not going to have a good cash flow, and the landlord can very easily see that. So what are the ranges? Where are you in? When we look at the ranges, I would just say that kind of take it as a general guideline. It's nothing written in stone. It's just something that I threw together on paper based on my own experience with applicants. So more or less on a lower scale for the applicants, if you have less than $3,000 in monthly income for the family, I mean, not just for you, but however many applicants there are going to be. If you have, if your debts are a bit more than 50% of your income and your credit score is less than 550, you already have a lot of problems, because you have low credit, you have high debts, and you have low income. Then if on top of that, your work history is less than 1 year, and you don't have a lot, because you have low income, you probably have low down payment as well. Or if you had those bankruptcies and foreclosures, this red part right here, this is where I see a lot of people getting rejected. Even if your income is high, but your debts are very high too, or your credit is lower, or you have work history that you only started 2 months ago in a new job, this is going to be your very high chance of rejection. If your income is between 3 to 6K, and your debt to income ratio, you're spending less than 40 or 50% of your income on your monthly payments to your credit cards and your car, you are starting to get more in the category where the sellers or landlords feel more comfortable lending to you. So your credit between 550 and 580. Why do I say 550 and 580? This is a very common credit score to be used for larger programs like DV Homes. 580 is probably as high as you want to be if you have to for a rent to own, because once you pass 580, unless you have some real serious issues with your credit, or you have large student loan amount or something like that, once you hit 580, you're more likely to start looking at a financing through FHA or another governmental loan. So 3 to 6K income, 550 to 580 credit. Your work history is between 1 to 2 years, and your down payment is at the very least 2-3% or above. The bad events, foreclosures, evictions, that are more than 12 months behind you. Then you're starting to look at maybes. You're now a maybe. Means that depending on the details of your file, that the landlord is going to look at your bank statements, how much you're spending, do you have pending child support, what else is going on in your life. He may or may not feel that you are worthy of putting the house in your hands for the next 3 years. And once you get if you have 3 to 6K in monthly income, but you have fewer debts, which means you have more disposable income in your hands, your credit score is more than 580, your work history is 2 years plus, you have 5 or more % down payment, whatever happened, whatever bad events happened in the past, there have been several years since that happened. Now they're much more likely to offer you the rent to own option, but also you need to start looking, do I really need a rent to own at this point, or how close am I to getting a traditional loan like FHA or conventional loan? So what are your options? You've been declined for rent to own. Let's look at potential combinations of factors that went wrong and how to resolve those problems. So let's start right here. If you have a low income and high debt and your credit is low, it means that you have no cash flow. When you have no cash flow, a rent to own is not going to be a good option for you, because even if you can get into that property, even if you can convince the seller to give you the opportunity to do a rent to own, until your cash flow improves, you may not be able to save for the down payment that is necessary for you to for you to get a loan at the end of 3 years. Per Texas law, you have 3 years to transition from rent to own. If you don't have cash flow, you cannot pay down your credit. You cannot pay down your debts. If you cannot pay down your debts, you cannot improve your credit score. So how are you going to finance at the end of 3 years? Even if you can somehow talk a landlord into letting you to do a rent to own, it may not, you may just lose out and have your hopes crashed at the end of 3 years, because you still won't be able to qualify for a traditional loan. If you have low income, but you have few debts or almost no debts, so your cash flow is flowing much better right here, and your credit maybe is 570, so you have $2,500 income, but you have no debts. You have all the income is disposable. Your credit is 580 or 600. Your work history is more than 1 year. You've been employed, but your down payment is low. I'm sorry, but you have a down payment that's between maybe 1% to 2%. I would say work with individual sellers. So you're probably not going to find a lot of good response among large programs like DV Homes or Home Partners of America, because they have pretty strict requirements. They have to process a lot of people. So they're chop, chop, chop. you know, you either fit or you don't. They don't really want to talk to you too much if you don't fit into their guidelines. But individual sellers who are just tired of landlording and they're looking to get out of the property, question is, why are they looking to get out of the property? The property costing them too much in maintenance? That's a question that you should be asking them before you buy. Nevertheless, for those individual sellers that might know you for, you know, a couple of years because you've been renting that, or you're just have a lot of things going for you and they're willing to kind of extend you the helping hand, and even though you have a low down payment, they're still offering you rent to own. Individual sellers would be your best bet, because with individual sellers you can build a rapport. They can kind of appreciate your good quality, so they can see your church work or whatever, and that could help you over the hump. But as far as the those websites online or the rental programs like Home Partners of America, probably not going to pass. So try again. If you're in this category right here, then try again, but look at individual sellers. And if you need to find individual sellers, let me know. I can try to help you. If you are in this category, so your income is, let's just say, between 3 to 6K. So you're already in a better income category, but you have a lot of debts. You have 3 car payments, and you have child support, and you have, you know, high medication bills, medical bills, student loans. You have very low cash flow, and your credit is low. Therefore, your down payment always will be low, you know, as a result. So your job then to continue to rent for a while, but see how you can free up your cash flow. For example, you have 3 car payments. Can those car payments be refinanced? Let's just say you bought 1 car 4 years ago. It's almost at the end of that loan, but your car payments are the same, you know, the same amount as on the day 1 of the loan. So if you can refinance that remaining part of the loan for 1 year and spread it over another 3 years, suddenly instead of paying $500 per month, you're paying, you know, $80 per month. That frees up 400, you know, that frees up 200 and something dollars in your disposable income. Also look at other spending. Can you sell some items that you're paying maybe a loan on, but nevertheless not using them? Can you get rid of that loan altogether? So your job right now would be, if you're in this category and the only thing that's stopping you is high debt, is to free up your cash flow and try again later once your cash flow improves. What if you have good income? You don't have a lot of debts, but your credit is low. Your credit like is 5 or 480 or 500, but not 540 or 550. So whatever happened there in the past, you're just still struggling to overcome. But you have good work history. You might be employed for 10 years by now at the same job. And your down payment, you finally saved up to 2 to 3% down payment over a period of time. But you do have some bad events. Maybe you had bad medical bills that you defaulted on, or some kind of other issues. Something right here is keeping your credit low in here. Again, work with individual sellers. You're probably not going to find very sympathetic ear among large national programs or the online websites, but you are going to find possibly a sympathetic ear among individual sellers who are individuals just like you, who are trying to solve a problem. And again, if you need to find individual sellers, let me know. If you have everything going for you, you have good credit, you have few debts, your credit is 550, 560, 580, 600, 650, but you either changed the job maybe like 3 months ago, maybe it's even a good thing that happened. Maybe your job used to pay you $2,500 per month, and you got a job that pays you twice as much. It now pays you $5,000 per month. That is great. But your job history is now too short for a lot of people to consider you. Even for a rent to own, they want to see some stability. They want to see that this is going to last. And your down payment is good. And when I say good, I mean you have a lot of money for a down payment. Let's just say 10% or 15% for a down payment. I would consider, or let's just say your work history was short, or you have had some recent bad events, like for example, you recently went through a foreclosure, you recently went through some kind of situation that caused you to not be eligible for a lot of other programs. In that case, try seller financing. I'm going to go over seller financing a little bit later, but just in short, you may be able, instead of renting the property for three years first, you might be able, with a good down payment, make an offer to buy it outright on day one, and this way get the property in your hands. Because seller financing, you don't need to show the landlord that you're going to be a good renter for 3 years. Once you buy the house kind of is all yours, whether you're able to maintain your work history or not. And the last, but hopefully you're in this category, but if you're in this category, and let's just say that you have good income, you don't have a lot of debts, or your cash flow is good. Well, you have debts, but your cash flow is good. Your credit is 550 plus. Your work history is 1 year plus. Your down payment is 3% plus. You have no bad events, but you still got rejected. That could happen, of course, due to many issues. Maybe there was a glitch. Maybe they didn't like your application. Maybe they didn't have enough cash to fund all of their applicants. Whatever happened, you are in a good position to try again with another program. So when you're in this spot, you can apply with individual sellers. You can apply with those online websites, and you can apply with larger national programs. Either one of them would be a good bet, but I would encourage you to apply again if you still want to try a rent-to-own solution. So as of right now, if you like this content, click subscribe and also hit like. I would like to see the count, like count for this video to go up. Now it's time for a few bonus tips. For me, what I gave you might have been a little too dense, so let me break it down a little bit more granular for you. So what happens, I promised to address social security number. So what happens if you don't have a social security number? Okay, do you have an ITIN? A lot of people don't have social security but have ITIN. If you don't have ITIN, could you get ITIN? What's stopping you from getting ITIN? So there are such things as ITIN loans. There are some loans that are structured for ITIN holders. There are very, very few of them. But if you want to find a lender who accepts an ITIN as a form of ID, well, not ID, but as a form of instead of social security number, let me know and I will see what I can do to put you in touch with a lender like that. Try though, do your best to reach 600 plus FICO score, because once you get to that situation where you might be eligible for an ITIN loan, you don't want an opportunity to slip away just because you have 510 credit score. So you don't have social security, all right, at the very least do your best and clean up your credit history. In the meantime, while you're not yet, maybe you don't may not yet have the ITIN, but you still want to buy the house. Okay, so start with seller financing. Seller financing does not need necessarily ITIN number. So if you can work with a seller who is willing to offer financing without ITIN, but you will get an ITIN sometime down the road, this might be a solution for you. So seller financing, or if you already have an ITIN, then maybe skip seller financing and go straight to ITIN loans. And this is my contact information in case you have questions about finding a lender for ITIN loans. Okay, so if you have that combination of low income and bad cash flow, low income is not something that's easily fixable within a year or two. If you have very low income, possibly because you are divorced, single mom with several kids, and you have to work 2 or 3 jobs just to support your kids, this is probably not going to go poof and suddenly become, a $10,000 per month job. So you need to budget that your low income might increment, but it might not drastically increment. Therefore, I recommend that instead of looking at rent to own, which might accidentally put you further away from your dream because they will make you pay higher rent, spending more and more of your income on rent, but you won't be able to save for the down payment. So I would say don't go for rent to own in this combination. Instead, take whatever savings you have and go for a cleanup of your credit, because federal government already has a program to help people with low income to get into houses without the down payment. So if I had low income and I had a choice whether I should save for a down payment but maintain bad credit because I'm saving for the down payment, so I can't really pay down my debts, or if I should let go of that cash and invest it into paying down my debts and improving my credit, I would go for no down payment but spend all my money on credit improvement, because once I hit 640, the government is going to give me a grant to help me to pay for my house. I don't need a down payment. I don't need a lot of cash. I just need a good credit score. To help you to reach that goal, let me refer you to a gentleman whom I truly respect in the field of credit repair. His name is Joe Camacho. He speaks Spanish. He is an awesome expert on credit repair and preparing people for home ownership. So here is his contact information. Reach out to him, tell them that Elena sent you, and tell him that you want to reach the FHA, Federal Housing Authority, and down payment assistance. So DPA stands for down payment assistance. So your true goal in home ownership is going to come from those 6 letters, FHA, DPA. They are going to be able to get you into the house. What if you have a moderate income? Let's just say you make between $3,000 and $10,000 per month. That's a moderate income, but you do have high debts for whatever reason. Maybe you're paying huge student loan. Maybe you're paying, a ton of medical bills. So whatever happened, your job is to get rid of bad cash flow. Therefore, since you're moderate income, so you don't really have that much of a struggle to save for the down payment, then I would say contact Joe again and tell him that you want to reach 550 to 600 credit score. This way you will become eligible either for rent to own or for an FHA funding. FHA starts at 580. So the bottom number for FICO scores for FHA is 580. So once you reach 580, start applying for FHA loans. Until then, if it takes you a little bit to get there, go ahead and get that rent to own with your 550 and start working on improving your cash flow slowly. When you have good cash flow, but bad credit, let's just say you make $6,000 per month, but due to 2 years ago, you had a bankruptcy and a foreclosure, so your credit down the toilet, your cash flow is good, spend your cash on improving your credit. Pay off your bills, pay off your loans, settle whatever expenses that you can settle. Again, reach to Joe Camacho. Your aim, just like with the previous group, is to reach 550 to 600, because once you're in that category, your dream of home ownership is starting to become very much realistic. You're now eligible for rent to own or for an FHA program. If you had bad events like bankruptcy and foreclosure, if you had a foreclosure, you're obviously not, it's not your first house. It means that you probably already owned the houses in the past. So in that case, focus on reaching to 600 FICO score, and putting some distance between you and that event. For if I'm, I might, somebody might correct me, but for you to do an FHA loan again, it would require 3 years of past the prior foreclosure. But if you're planning to go for a traditional conventional loan, then it would be 7 years. So during that time, maybe using rent to own or seller financing would make a good use of your money, especially seller financing. So rent to own is limited to only 3 years in Texas. So if your bankruptcy happened last year and you have, the good enough cash to actually live in a nicer house or buy a nicer house, I would recommend looking at seller financing, because with seller financing, you have, anywhere between 5 to 30 years to increase your credit to the point that you can refinance. With rent to own, you only have 3 years. And if you're not eligible for FHA for whatever reason, and you have to go to conventional, that's a lot of years for you to rent. You might not be able to utilize the rent to own as efficiently. So use seller financing if you can, if you have the down payment for seller financing, and work on your credit repair during that time. By the way, if you need references to finding seller finance, how this was seller financing, reach out to me. Here's my contact information. I will be able to discuss it with you further. So if you have high income, let's just say you make $10,000 per month, but all your business is cash, you're selling ice cream, from a truck. In that situation, you need, or if you maybe you used to make $2,500 per month, but you got this great job offer and now you're making $10,000 per month. This is all great, but it only happened 2 months ago. In that case, go ahead and see if you can reapply for another, depending on other factors, see if you can reapply with another rent to own. But if you have enough of a down payment, then maybe look at using straight up seller financing and getting the house through seller financing. While you're under seller financing usually means pretty high interest on your loan. Either you under rent to own or seller financing, build your credit history. Stop not filing taxes. You got to file taxes. IRS can come after you. Therefore, start building your credit history. Start filing, even if you have a 1099, start filing your 1099, start declaring your cash. Your aim is to refinance with 580 plus credit score. So build up to a 580 plus at least 2 years of 1099 showing decent income. So you can use either rent to own or seller financing to achieve that goal. So what the heck is seller financing? Seller financing is a situation where an individual who has quite a bit of cash, let's just say 10% of the price of the house, he finds an investor who is willing to do a seller financing loan for him. How does that work? Well, I'm going to have a separate YouTube video just on how seller financing works and how you can benefit from it. But one thing that you need to remember right now, that it requires at the minimum of 10% down payment usually, plus closing costs, something that you don't know yet about, but they also eat up quite a bit of your cash, plus prepaid expenses such as prepaid taxes and insurance to be put into your escrow. Because in rent to own, you're not technically owning for 3 years. You're still renting. You don't need to worry about taxes. You don't need to worry about insurance. You don't need to worry about underlying costs of real estate transactions. But once you're doing rent to own and you buy it from either your landlord or an investor, now things like what are closing costs, what are prepaids, those are things that add up to about 4% of the purchase price. So realistically, if you have a house on Zillow that you like, let's just say that house costs $200,000. Look at it and see what would be 10% of that amount, and that would be, of course, $27. Do you have another 4 or 5% from that amount? So let's just say if the 10% of it would be 10% of it would be $27. Do you have another $10,000? So you have down payment, which is $27, plus prepaids, which is another 4 or 5%. So if you have $37 in total, then call me or text me or contact me and say, I would like to find more about seller financing, because then you don't need to rent at all. You can just go straight to purchase and purchase the house, and you will start enjoying things like equity increase and a lot of other good things that come with ownership of the house. On that note, this is as dense of an explanation that I could possibly put together. I'm sure that it's a lot of information for you to digest right now, and I went through it pretty fast. I apologize. I am going to take each individual case and maybe do a separate video on it later on, what to do about no Social Security, what to do about bad cash flow, but that's not going to happen right now. In the meantime, if you haven't done so yet, please hit like and please hit subscribe, so when my next video rolls out on rent to own, seller financing, repairing your credit, or whatever else, you don't miss it. Also, please note that if you're interested in rent to own houses, then I created a Facebook page, Facebook/rent to own Dallas. And in that page, I'm going to post articles, videos, tips, tricks on how to do a rent to own and get yourself approved. With that said, this is my very first YouTube video that I'm going to post online. Yays to me, and I'll see you guys at the next video.